in the chat. Welcome to the Job Scam Report back here with crew. Oh, now we're going. I don't know. Everything seems to be a little slower when I go on for our live stream. The other live stream, it runs smoothly. I don't know what it is. Hey there, how's everybody? The Job Scam Report. Thank you very much for joining us here. Got the crew back with me. We are all here. Starting with the bottom corner. I don't know how it appears to you guys, but the only girl in the group, Ashley, how are you?
I am doing all right. How about yourself? So glad you guys are all here with us today.
Yes, we're glad to hear. All you guys got a lot going on, and I hope to get a little bit of time to get a sneak peek into what you guys are working on. But Jay Jones, how are you, sir?
Doing all right. How are you? Glad to be back.
I'm glad you're here as well. And I didn't get an update. How many jobs have you removed from LinkedIn at this point?
54,911 in total.
Okay, so close to 55,000.
Correct. Yeah, 100 on heels. I'll do a quick calculation real quick.
Oh, okay, awesome. And the HR Honey Badger, Mr. Russ Burb, how are you, sir?
Doing fantastic, recovering, and got some new things coming out soon. So really enjoying life.
Yeah, no, and you guys should be following. You all who are checking in, give us a hi, and it's very nice here in Chicago. The weather has been very cool here. Loving it, and we are just so ready to go these days. There's a lot of news that's been out recently this month, and I think even last week there was a news things that are very much maybe not exactly job scams, but we kind of count ghost jobs in that mix. And there's a lot of articles and things that I've seen and I've been reading, I've been spending a lot of time on. I want you guys to weigh in because we've talked about before. The ghost jobs and the fake jobs are right next to each other. And as far as a lot of people can see, they think that a ghost job is a fake job. Even though if you've been educated in all things recruiters, they will say, well, they're not fake jobs. My friend Craig used the word evergreen jobs. These are jobs that they continually hire for, but they keep out on the plank. And then there's the future jobs. That's something we haven't quite talked about yet, but that goes kind of along with the ghost job. And of course, we know about the fake jobs. We tend to focus in on it. But I want to get you guys' thoughts on what New York is doing. They got a bill saying that, you guys got to be more transparent when you're posting jobs. We want to know, is it for now? Is it for the future? Or is it something you're just trying to data mine? As well as Texas, and I don't know if you guys have heard about it, and I kind of alluded to it in our chat, that Texas has a LinkedIn problem. In other words, LinkedIn, they're challenging LinkedIn on saying you're charging premium members for jobs that you're posting, but they don't exist. Is the short of it. I hope I have it right. And those of you in the chat, correct me if you'd like. But I want to you all to weigh in. I'm going to start with Russ first. I don't know if you had a chance to delve any part of that, but would love to hear yours, and then we'll go around to everybody to see what you guys are thinking.
And that's the problem, because there are real jobs that sometimes will look like ghost jobs. I just posted a position the other day that had been brought to me asking folks to apply. And I sent their information to the hiring manager, and they're like, Russ, it's been over a week. I've heard nothing. And the thing about this, it's a state job, which means they'll actually list on there, say they won't even start calling people until this certain date. it might be 2 months that the job is open that they're accepting applications for, especially for senior jobs. And folks all apply, they're fully qualified, and they'll probably get called back. But when they haven't heard back in a month or second month, it's just how it is with a lot of these state jobs and these state job recruiters. So it'll look like a ghost job. They've had plenty of applications, but no movement. But like you say, there are a lot of those on there. LinkedIn hasn't really done that great of a job. And because I've seen them, ones that I applied for about 2 years ago that are still accepting applications. And they're just always more and more and more. It'll close down and the same exact job pops back up. You know, that's the data miners. That's, you know, in fact, there's a Nigerian company that I posted about on my job scamming thing on LinkedIn a year ago. The good thing is, the wonderful thing is, he said, "Will you please shut that down?" He goes, "I am a legitimate businessman." He goes, "I have, when I reach out to people, they've seen this. When they run my company through, it pops up, and I'm not a scammer." I'm like, "Show me why you're not." Because I go to your site and I still see the same thing. So, you know, so if any of y'all feel like we're not doing anything, we are having an effect.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, go ahead, Ashley.
And
You go ahead.
sorry, and even on my end, to that point, when it comes to my clients, I'd have all of them keep track of every job that they apply to, because some of them won't hear anything back for like 6 months, 8 months, and they'll have to go back to their job tracker and say, "Wow, I applied to that back in 2025," and they're just reaching out. So I say that also to say that when you're applying and you're feeling like, man, these jobs don't want me because they're not responding back, keep in mind that it may have nothing to do with you. It can have everything to do with their hiring process. And unfortunately, you become what we call like the victim in the process.
Yeah. And I think people are still experiencing getting replies from jobs they applied for a year or two ago. I think is really fascinating. That's still happening in this day and age. I mean, I could understand like in 2021, 2022, when it was happening, that things were slow because of the pandemic. Now that we're 6 years removed from it, I'm like, well, why is this still being a thing? Right? So, I would have loved to hear what Jay's seen. We'll have to come back to him whenever we get a opportunity. But yeah, I think that it is confusing people. And Texas, it's the Texas Attorney General. They haven't made it quite a bill, but he's looking at LinkedIn side-eyed it. Like, you guys are charging members for something that you promised them, but they're not going to see a return on it because it looks like you're faking the funk, so to speak.
About time.
Yeah, it's time for somebody to challenge them. And I'm just wondering to see how these things will go. Other states will also put forth their issue, and maybe it will help crack LinkedIn. I don't know.
It seems like consequences
Go
are the
ahead.
only things that really move companies nowadays, are the consequences, those big financial penalties. And when it crosses states like that, that's when we're going to see some real big change. That's what I predict.
Yeah, hit them in the pocket. That seems to be the language
Exactly.
that a lot of these organizations seem to understand. If you, especially Texas, they're dead serious about it, the way the AG sounded. So, New York bill is saying that, hey, identify the jobs, which is the premise we talked about early in the podcast when we started a couple of years ago. One of the first things I said, employers at least tell people what you're doing with their data and give them the option to either opt out of you giving it to your partners, or whether you're selling it, whatever you're doing. There are recruiters who say that companies are not supposed to, and they don't sell to their third party. We could argue that part later, but I guess the most important thing is for the job seeker to be able to have to say in the process. In addition to also just telling what type of job is it. Are you hiring for now, or you're hiring for later, or you're just playing with us in our face? which one is it? So, did you guys have any thoughts about that? Even
They'll try to
further?
find loops. It's like the payroll thing, the states
Yeah.
that have transparent pay. Then suddenly you're seeing people put
Mhm.
from 5,000 to 50,000. Okay, that's not putting a pay range in there.
Right.
Or the
No.
ones who will be in a state, they'll say it's remote. I don't have to put it on there, even though our company's in California, because the job seeker could be outside of California. They'll try to
Yeah.
find, and that just tells you a lot about the company in itself. When they try to
Yeah.
find loopholes, be less transparent, is that really a company you want to work for? Because they're going to be the same way once you start working for them also.
Right.
Um, they will start putting the hammer down on these companies. It, like I said, it's just going to help the consumer. I don't want my information out there everywhere. And,
Mhm.
just, I mean, there seems to be a little bit less of the AI applying than it used to happen because people started to realize, oh my gosh,
Okay.
I am getting scammed. Even now, I mean, I might have a scammer a month try to talk to me where I used to have like 3 to 4 a week at least.
Mm.
So,
Mhm.
and now they're a lot more upper scale. It's not as easy to see them as it used to be. So that's also harder for the folks out there. And I've had people come to me and go, Russ, I don't see your scam bus anymore. Sadly, these same scammers, I had more than 7 of them contact my job. And they were calling
Mhm.
repeatedly, calling the president, calling on the people in my office. And they would just call all day long, go, I don't like this guy, I don't like this guy. Even though what I put on there is true, but at
Right.
the same time, I also got to pay bills. I don't need my president going, you know what, you're not worth the problem anymore. You either do this or
Mhm.
do that. So, now it's more leaning towards the HR or less towards the scam simply because of that. And they will
Right.
come after you hard. Yeah, he'll tell you too.
I
Right.
heard.
Yeah.
Have you
Yeah.
guys some relief from some of these scammers that just were harassing you guys?
That's why I actually, and I hate to say it, that's why I had to step back because I had to go, okay, I can either help a lot of folks or I can pay the bills and, feed my kids. I still help
Right.
people
Right.
contact me, but now it's on an individual basis. They'll ask me to investigate things. I'll send them information, but the scammer doesn't know that I'm involved.
Right.
That's good for
Right.
safety.
For sure. For sure. And and scammers do take it personally, as we've all also have experienced. Whether it's our DMs or emails about them being outed and busted, they're just have you know they haven't stopped. They're just coming at you in a different way, which kind of reminds me of going back to just really the whole tie-in here with employers is transparency, right? They
Mhm.
want the job seeker to be as transparent as possible while they can still have the poker face, so to speak. They they're not even a lot of still there's a lot of employers who are not very upfront about how they hire or consistent in their explanations. Now, when you talk to recruiters, they are. But I see a lot of employers who have, in the past couple of years, have a page that tells them tell people how they hire. I see that not as often as I like, but I think that kind of also demystifies the employer and also it helps the applicant. I mean, there are people who are trying to do it the right way, but they're also being lumped in with other people and doing it who are doing it the wrong way. You guys have a perspective on that at all? Have you any insights into that? Because I'm seeing like NVIDIA for years, and I always use it for example because they're very specific about how they hire, and you could even put in the search engine how we hire NVIDIA, and their page comes right up. But everybody else kind of gives a little side blur. But I think that kind of transparency from employers kind of helps, job seeker nation and universally on, that people spot the people who are making the funk, so to speak, who are
Yeah.
fake employers and fake recruiters.
So we actually talked about something similar to this inside of GRC Nerds last night when we talked about
Uh-huh.
organization standardizing their processes to a point where we have a repeatable process across multiple departments.
Right.
Sometimes you'll see organizations that don't have those systems in place. They may not have a formal, centralized standard when it comes to hiring. So one
Mhm.
department would say we do 2 rounds of interviews. Another department will say, well, we have to go through 5 rounds of interviews. And so it can get really confusing. So I tell my clients that when you're interviewing, if they don't have that there, and your first call, ask them, what does the interview process look like for this organization? How many stages can I expect? And what does that actually look like in each stage? Am I required to do a project? Am I required to do some research? Like, what does it look like for me? Because if the organization doesn't have that process in place already, it's good for you as an individual to get that information up front. You might decide, I don't want to be a part of this. You want 7 interviews from me? I don't got 7 hours worth of time to give to you. So it's
Right.
good to know that for your.
Right.
I'm lucky I
Yeah.
went through the beat downs for 18 months. Because when I got here to get it standardized, I pushed the envelope a little bit. I told them, hourly people, now there's going to be no more references needed. Why does a 17-year-old cashier need references?
Mm.
No cover letter needed. Not going to have a
Mhm.
7-person hiring panel for a cashier. I said, there'll be no more than 3, hopefully just 1 to 2. And now I've got
Mhm.
it pushed up now to where it's exempt. Director and below, same things. The cover letter not required. No more than a 3-person hiring panel. So standardizing, because I was having a group over here having 7 people on a hiring panel and having 3 interviews sets. And then I was having a group over here having 2 people on an interview panel and having 1. And that's not the
Mhm.
way things work. So getting it standardized in there. I mean, the pushback I got, even on LinkedIn, when I talked about giving people interview questions 24 hours out, some people were loving it.
Right.
Some were like, oh my God, no way, because then they have time to get the answers. That's what I want. I want their best answer. And if they got it off the internet, my follow-up questions, I'm gonna know if you're giving me lies. The people with the autism and other things, they're loving it because
Mhm.
they don't do well under that kind of pressure. And I instituted it here, and the people here, they were kind of shy about it, but now after they did it, they said their interviews are going so much better now. They're getting much better traction.
Good deal. Good deal. I like the idea of having giving people a chance to prepare and I think the next level is giving them the questions beforehand. Though I think that if you decide not to, that's fine. I just wish the entry level parts of it, I mean, the initial contact with the company isn't as complicated. You know,
Yeah.
no, I mean, I didn't have that problem dating back in the 80s. You know what I mean? It was you ask the girl out now, you ask the girl, she says yes or no. Now it's like, you ask the girl and, young people say, oh, what do you bring to the table and all that. So we haven't gotten to the interview yet. So it's kind of it's different for everybody, but it's problematic at the same time with everybody doing something different. At least be consistent is probably all I have. Jay, we haven't heard from you at all, sir. How are
Yeah,
you?
sorry, I had some camera issues.
Yeah,
When it comes to the
I've
hiring
had those.
process, the question is, do you really want to hire? And then if the answer is yes, then why are you setting up things and processes that are setting people up to fail? Because if the answer is yes, you
Exactly.
want to hire, then why are you making it a hostile landscape? Why are you setting people up to fail? And then go behind the scenes and saying, well, we can't find anybody. There's a reason you can't find anybody. It's because the structure and the methodology is set up to exclude everybody who has one red flag about them, like something like they messed up an answer or they got nervous, or human things like the obvious things like
Hmm.
outright deception and things like that. Sure, they absolutely should not make it through. But when you're making the whole process hostile, when you're treating it like it's a gotcha moment at every single stage and iteration, then of course you're going to have these problems. And then you sit up and look at the landscape and say, we can't find anybody. Well, then it's time to start looking inward, because if you're getting thousands of applicants, hundreds are making it through, and maybe a few dozen get to the final round of interview processes, and you still can't find anybody, it's time to like take some accountability there and retool some things.
Can I add something to what you
Right.
say? That's really, really a really, really strong point. What I found too in working with organizations, HR may have gotten training when it came to interviewing and identifying good candidates. You don't typically see that in the stage 2 to stage 3. In stage 2, when you go to the next round, it's usually somebody that's going to be working with you on your team. You don't usually see them go through any formal training on interviewing. So they may very well feel like there's nobody in this 1,000 that we went through. And I think companies need to start thinking about, who are we having interviewing our candidates, and are they truly qualified to do these interviews in the first place?
You just reminded me of something, because I've been doing Uber intermittently to bring in some income, and just last night I picked up these a man and a woman who were in town for a conference with a company, major software company, and we got on the topic of ghost jobs and the hiring processes and things like that. And the gentleman, he told me that they recently had somebody that got a job, and then within about 2 months, not 2 months, within 2 weeks of starting, he said his mother died. So he immediately gets bereavement, never showed up and got paid for 2 months, never showed up to the job, and got a free laptop. So that's another way people try to game the system. But when I asked him, I was like, so this was an engineering job, wasn't it? And he was like, yeah, how'd you know? And I was like, because those jobs typically have a lot of keys, information, and things like that. And then the other issue was, he's not formally trained to interview. He was just called in to interview because they were busy with other interviews. So that's another gap that these businesses have. It's like when you're overwhelmed with the people who actually have the training, you call in assistants, but if they don't have the formal training to actually do it, they can either let somebody in who shouldn't be, or they can exclude somebody who should be.
Yeah. Yep. I think when you look at it all, most companies, is nobody, very few managers love interviewing. And mostly everybody hates the interview process. And
I loved it.
What's that?
I loved it. When I used to do my interviews,
I didn't, and I didn't mind when I was a manager. I thought that was the interesting part of the interviewing. It was dealing with HR, which was the most challenging part of it, because you get HR and their standards, and sometimes their standards wasn't making sense. Like, and this is back in the day when you, Ashley, and Jay were really young. And I say that because some of it hasn't changed. And I remember the HR would have a policy like, we don't pass anyone on that has a mistake on their resume. But
again,
that's ridiculous.
But if they were referred by somebody in the executive office or a long-standing director or manager, they can go right on by. They can go right on through. And but it's the consistency. And that's why I hated dealing with HR, because you never know that you want to hire somebody, but because they caught something later on that they were supposed to screen out to begin with, then that becomes labor at that particular point. That becomes beyond the job description. Russ, you probably experienced other things.
It's called common sense.
Yeah.
I got here, and they have requirements on it that they want to have. It says you have to send in your cover letter, your resume, and your references, and this and that. And if someone didn't send in one of those, then they were gone because they can't follow directions. I'm like, but they're perfectly qualified. They're great at their job. So they forgot one part, and you're not going to move them forward. Well, no, because they can't follow instructions. Okay, so we're losing out a great applicant because you've got some kind of stupid square that they're supposed to check. So I've been the big fighter against that here. That's the reason why I said no more references until the end, and then you ask. No more cover letter, because we were having great candidates who had been disqualified because they would forget to send something in. They wouldn't even contact them and say, oh, they can't follow instructions. Get rid of them. That's not common sense. That's just Well,
It's
stupidity
not.
at my point, but
It's
yeah,
also not humane because
yeah.
they're looking at it from this ecosystem of stability. Their minds are not scattered in so many different places because this is why I call it layout PTSD. You have these candidates, they're
Mhm.
applying to so many positions and there's so many things to keep track of. And I'm not one to make excuses, but it's like you have all these things coming at you on top of the scams, on top of the people saying, hey, we found your application. We think you're perfectly fit for this job. And again, you're applying to so many jobs, you don't know whether or not that's real, nor do you have the time to check because you have people using auto apply and they're like, do this, jump through this hoop, jump through that hoop. And then if you act quickly, you think this is the one, but that's the one that typically gets you. Now, when you're sitting up and saying they made a small mistake, it's like, well, did they lie on their resume? Did they impersonate somebody else? Did they try to defraud you in some fashion? It's like these little things that you're nitpicking and again setting people up to fail. Yes, technically they did not follow that direction, that instruction, but where's the humanity? Where's the grace in it?
Looking
Absolutely.
for skills, go for skills. Use common sense. I use common sense interviewing. I tell folks, these behavioral interview questions, I can't stand them. Y'all see me post about that probably. You know, I'm a professional. I've been doing this for 30 years as HR. I've been a commander in the military. And then you're going to ask me a stupid question. Have you ever dealt with conflict at work? And if you do, tell me about it. All right. Why am I wasting my time with you? All right. I can't get to where I've got unless I've done that 1,000 times. Ask me how I can fix what's broken in your company. Ask a real question. And when I'm doing these, and what I tell the folks when they're interviewing jobs here is I'm like, 3 questions. You can have as many follow-ups as you want, but I want only 3 questions asked in an interview. Figure out the 3 most important questions in the world, and it isn't going to be what's your favorite color. It better be something important about the job, and then you can ask follow-ups. But 3 questions, that's it. Because folks here know if an interview takes over a half hour, I'm getting irritated. And
Yeah.
from our side, now they can ask as many of their questions and it could go on. But if because of what we asked, if it's over a half hour, you're wasting my time because we shouldn't be needing to go that far.
It goes back to the question: is the interview for the candidate, or is it for the person conducting to blow the? I mean, because very
Yep.
often that's the case, is that they want to show that they're the boss, and they want to make sure you understood that by the time you walk out the door, which is not a qualifying. It doesn't really help your vetting process at all, or your onboarding. So it's crazy. But I think all this wraps around because fake interviews and fake jobs and fake companies, they don't have those barriers to entry, which is very
No.
interesting.
Yeah,
We're
yes,
having
come
it,
on, come on.
yeah, it's like come one, come all. And I understand that companies can't operate that. I get that. But I think they make it so attractive when it's easier to communicate with them, even though they may do it by text and they may use AI avatars. But I
Hmm.
think all of that, I think there needs to be the distinct companies can start being more human, as it has been said, be more humane, like Jay has said. So I want to get to a couple of the comments. It is really a couple of these things are really good. First of all, saying hi to Nigeria Mays there, Deanne Green. Hello. Jason Jeffries, awesome. Natalie Powell, thank you. And a couple of HR folks in our audience as well. Nigeria says, going back, if we're seeing the same companies post the same jobs, it can also be related to employee retention, which is a signal of the company's culture. Yes, it can. Yes, it
Hmm.
can. And it could be, it's interesting when you see postings, and I've heard of this lately. Somebody vented to me that they said, yeah, I applied for several jobs in this company, and each of the departments have different process to how their interview process go. It was really
Yeah,
fascinating to hear that one, like Russ explained, one had a panel of a few people and then had another panel of a few people. And this wasn't even a job for a $20 an hour job. This wasn't even
Yep.
a professional level job. This was a it was, a non-exempt job. It's like, why are we
Mm.
spending that much time on it? I mean, to me, that's wasting money. I can understand it
Ego.
for more of the upper level jobs where there needs to be a lot more closely because you're entrusting them with a whole lot more information and access. But it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, we've seen that. Russ, did you want to comment on that?
I just said it's about ego, and if it's in a situation
Yeah.
like that, and I don't care if I step on toes, I'm old enough anyway. That's an HR area that has not grabbed control of a situation. That's when HR is not being effective. If it's all these different setups, no,
Yeah.
that should not be that. But I mean, interviewing, hiring, that belongs to recruiting. Sometimes HR depends on the company, but if you've got a weak HR, they're going to allow that to happen. That's not going to happen
Hmm.
in my world.
Or
Yeah.
how
The other
about this,
thing,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry.
Russ and Mark? I had a client of mine who also interviewed for a major technology company. 5 rounds of interviews. He already knew what to expect because they put it on the website. And as he gets to the final round, the guy says to him, I don't even know why they're having me interview you because we've already filled this position. But I'm going to interview you anyway.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get the job. We already filled the position. And then the next day, the company had major layoffs. And so it kind of goes to that point of what is really going on here?
Um,
Yeah.
well, it's
Okay.
something I've been working on for quite some time. It's subject matter I'm going to put out is called the perfect out because the biggest issue that I've seen is how do you determine what a ghost job is, and there are so many outs. This is why I call it the perfect out because when it's a
Hmm.
nefarious company, whether it's a legitimate one or one pretending to be a legitimate one, and they have no intention of hiring, they have so many perfect outs to explain why the job is posted. So earlier in the conversation, when I mentioned the candidate who took the job, but then immediately had a relative die, and then they were out of the loop for 2 months. That's 2 months that job was taken down. Then, when that person is finally revealed to be a fraud, that job comes back up. So, to the untrained eye, it looks like this company is not actually hiring; they're just recycling this posting. But you don't know that that candidate was wasting their time collecting a check, and that's actually certain scammers' hustle. They'll go around to different companies, and I joked with the writer I had. I was like, "You have no idea how many scammers have killed their mothers and grandmothers in their lifetime just doing that because it's a level of income. It can get you 2 months here, 2 months there, and so on. The other
Hmm.
perfect out is if somebody lies on their information or the background check comes back and there's a major red flag, but they've already invested this time into this person, took the posting down, extended the offer, and then, that several weeks that the posting comes down, find a red flag or
Hmm.
something else, and then the posting comes back up. You think it's another ghost job situation, and it's not. So there are so many different outs and so many different loopholes that these underhanded companies do. That's why it's hard to pin it down.
Yeah. It just makes them look more fake. And I think when we hear people say that, you see it on LinkedIn, you hear it in discussion, they're not just talking about either just those scam jobs or with the ghost jobs. A lot of times they're talking about scam jobs where it's a legitimate job where they do pay and they do offer benefits and this, that, and other, and people come in and out. But the way they treat people, it's hard to believe that they are able to get away with such scammy behavior is what I always have called it. It is scammy behavior. Why would you, if you're researching a company, if you're vetting a company, why would you want to work for a company that behaves the despite I get that you may be in dire strait. You might be in
Been there.
desperation
That's
and
why.
that's another yeah, and that's always a part of the discussion too. That's part of the emotional part of being scammed is that you're in that vulnerable place where you're considering crossing your own integral and moral bounds that you've had, that you're willing to work, possibly work for something fake. And I just think that's wild, but that's where people are.
Yeah, I mean, it goes also to like people who openly advocate for leasing or selling their LinkedIn accounts. It goes
Mhm.
back to that. I mean, I've been talking about this for quite some time, but it's like there's this disconnect, and I said humanity because people that have this entitlement or this castigating mindset about people who've been in the job market for X amount of years or whatever, and you look at them and you say, oh, they're this or something wrong with them, and you just need to do this. It's like, how come you have the magic answer, but nothing they tried, which is among the magic answers that you have, has worked? So it's like getting over yourself and stepping into the other person's shoes for a minute and seeing what it would be like for you if you were that person. But that, as the days go on, it gets harder and harder for people to do.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we'll keep an eye out on how things will progress. I've been trying to watch the news a lot for those. It's not so much that. I think right now there's also more talk about the fake candidate aspect that companies are watching a whole lot closer now. And there's some I hear they are starting to tear apart their whole onboarding process to make sure that they're not hiring somebody fake. As Russ has pointed out, and we talked about in other podcasts, that it costs millions of dollars to find
Yes, it
something
does.
fake, and then you have to upheaval everything to make sure not only that you don't have any more in the pipeline, but make sure that it also doesn't happen again. So you have to do both simultaneously. Do you guys think that there is still a disruption to come because of potential fake, not just fake jobs, but also fake candidates? Do you think that's going to escalate coming up here?
I'm
Russ,
not going to
I
get
know you have an
political
opinion.
here
Right.
on this, but I think with the new making it tougher for the F1 visas and things like that, because that's what a lot of the
Mhm,
scammers were doing, especially the North Korean, the Nigerian, the China scammers were doing,
mhm,
is they were counting on that, not having to come here, using other people,
mhm.
everything being remote work. It's very hard
Yeah.
to deep dive on someone remote in another country. So what they're doing
Mhm.
now, like I said, is that person just finding someone here that is here, and then using their stuff. They're applying, and like I said, that company, like you said, it costs millions, but it depends on how deeply you let someone from the North Korean government get into your company. What did they take out of there? And how long are they there, and how many do you have? Just because you caught one doesn't mean you don't already have six others. That's that big scam there. Uh, you're getting, I mean, when you're pushing the F1 situation like it is now, you may be dropping a little bit from those outside companies, because even if it's a real person, say you bring in someone, say it's from India, or say it's even from England, and it's a real F1 visa, you still don't know that person's background. It's a lot harder to deep dive international than it is here. And so you don't know who you're bringing on, who you're bringing in. And that's what a lot of companies are looking at. They're making the candidate come to their location. And that's what we do. That final interview, I don't care where you're at, you're going to be here on campus for that final interview, because we want to see that you are a live being.
And
Yeah.
oh,
Go ahead, Ashley.
Russell, really, really good point. So me, outside of my organization, I take on side contract work as well, usually AI stuff, cyber stuff, what have you. I put a
Mhm,
comment on somebody's Instagram post about some of the platforms that I use, and I kid you not, over the course of a week, hundreds of messages from people abroad saying, I can't get an account on that platform. Can you allow me to use yours? And I complete the work and I do it from your account. So even though I'm a legitimate individual, if I wasn't the ethical person that I was, I can only imagine how many people would fall for that and allow somebody in a completely different country end up taking over their account. And so I just blocked every single person. But don't just assume that because you see a person or you've had them come in on site for a visit, that that means that their accounts are truly secure. It's very scary what we're going to be dealing with over these next 10 or so years.
right.
Yeah, and this is
Well,
actually a
go ahead, Jay.
okay.
Go
So this
ahead.
is actually a service I provide to businesses to get in front of their pipelines to actually field what these candidates are doing, whether they're fake or real. And then by the time
Mhm,
they would actually get to the actual company, you're only dealing with real people. But how the what Russell touched on is bringing them on site. That is like basically the final check and making sure that they're real. But the other thing is they can use somebody proxy stateside, like what Ashley just said, where You have this candidate who's U.S. based, but then again, it goes back into the desperation mindset. Company, the real issue is scammers pay well, and so if you're targeting somebody who's desperate and they're like, "Hey, if you let me pay you X amount of dollars for you to bypass this interview process and make it through, then once you get your laptop, once you get access to the systems, you give me that information, and I'll do my damage remotely, as a North Korean operative or whatever." And then in the meantime, the stateside company thinks they have a quality hire who's doing quality work, but it's only when something is revealed or maybe the VPN gets exposed or something like that. That's when you see all of these pings to different nations when the person you hired is supposed to be in the U.S. So it's a major problem, and it's only going to accelerate.
Mm-hmm.
When their vulnerability is very interesting. I've been able to look at my subscriber list, and I want to see, can I tell what group is subscribing?
Yeah.
The biggest groups so far have been, number one by far, government employees. And I look at the email address, .gov. All those are on my subscriber list. They're the biggest group, probably 2 times that of my .edu list. And those are colleges. And I think those are the 2 most vulnerable groups, are the federal employees and the college, because everything is very fluid when it comes to hiring and letting go, especially you consider the news that's been involved in the past couple of years. They've had the most news. There has been news where there are scammers infiltrating servers. They don't have to be fake students. They could be students from another country who know how to get past servers and create a dummy EDU.
Yeah.
But yet they have that happens most in college, but yet they don't have like training for students to know how to notice a scam and notice communication. Now, I could be wrong, but they have warnings, but warnings are different than training. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it's not enough. Nowhere near enough.
Warning. You said,
attention.
here are some red flags, and and let the officer hear anything. But when there's training, then you have different touch points that they can go on. But just telling you to just watch out, and here are some red flags. There might be a few that will catch on, but now since it's so much more sophisticated, there needs to be much more training regarding that. If you're
Yeah.
in a college, if you're from a college, you're part of the college, and you agree with what I just said, holler at me in the comments. I'd like to know if what colleges are doing. But
That
do you
Another,
scares
guys?
me, Mark. What you just said scares me because what that says to me is people that are working in the government or even in education, they are sending their government emails out to third-party platforms. So usually organizations like governments will have policies in place to say what types of emails you can and cannot send out and receive
Mhm.
from your government email. So if they're signing up for your Substack, let's say they've decided to sign up for other things. Now they're creating a pipeline for potential phishing, right? Because now the
Mhm.
attacker or what have you know that this is a valid email, right? And so
Right.
it creates a further pipeline of potential issues to come. I think there needs to be a lot more training from a cybersecurity standpoint on what it means to protect your organization in 2026 forward. Because if not, I can foresee us having a lot more issues if people are signing up to accounts with their government emails.
Yeah. Yep. I
yeah,
can see that, and I could definitely see how vulnerable the college and those who work in higher education are going to have major issues coming up, because if you don't catch it at the front end, on the back end is already has spread like gangrene.
it's
Oh,
another thing
We
too. When
go
it
ahead.
comes to the gaming of verification, because I've said this before. Scammers, they have the time, they have the resources, and they have the willpower to
Hmm.
actually take things further than people would actually expect. So, specific to the
Yeah.
educational institutions, I said this to a writer the other evening, where scammers will go as far as registering as students, paying the money for the
Hmm.
actual like tuition and whatnot, getting that official EDU email, and then they'll go to
Yep.
LinkedIn and get verified through that university's email address, and then not
Hmm.
ever enroll, not ever take a class because the cost of enrolling in tuition is negligible when you're stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from people every single month, year, or however they scale it. And so,
Hmm.
I seeing account email to school years like have impersonators and have,
Hmm.
if you call them, you can actually be speaking to somebody else, rerouting phone numbers. It gets crazy. um, and then to your point, Ashley, about the .gov email being on your Substack, Mark, um, it releases the syntax information you at it. So, there are different
Hmm.
websites where you can look up email addresses, but most of the time when it comes to the government ones, they don't reveal the syntax because they don't want external people knowing how to communicate with them. But when you put that out there, you can just do a bunch of searches. And to Ashley's earlier point, if they're doing it with your Substack, they're signing up elsewhere.
Hmm.
And what that does is it leaves this digital trail and it can be found
Yeah.
and then exploited.
Yep, exactly. It's concerning that there's that many .gov people using business to sign up for something that's meant to be personal. You know what I mean?
Yep. And
And
I sent
that's
something to you
honestly,
not.
no, I was going to
I
say just
sent
real
you
quick,
one
but I'll
recently that was a scam.
go ahead. Uh,
I sent one that was recently to you, a scam that was an EDU. It's like Jay said, it's easy. You don't actually have
yeah,
to ever take a class. You just get accepted by the college. That's it. And then you have an
right.
EDU address. Not only that, now you have access to every student, every staff, every faculty, and you send out an email. Like I sent you that fake one that came up was about jobs, and it was coming
Right.
from an EDU address. And everybody here the other day asked me about a phishing thing. It came from me and was sent
Mm,
out. Now, if you hovered over my name, the address was not real. But how many
right.
people actually check that?
That's very
Right.
Especially if it was sent to staff and faculty here at the college. Oh, it's Russ Irby. Everybody knows I'm the HR director. They don't
Right.
hover over my name. But it was a phishing thing.
And that's a good point too. And this is kind of one of the same but separate. Pressing that where the address comes from is critical to that. And I was on a thread where, and I made a misjudgment, even though I had never counseled anybody to do this with Gmail, but I think it applies to Gmail and really all the others, is not to make sure that Gmail doesn't do the unsubscribing for you. You know how
Yeah.
you get the little message that says, "Do
Mhm.
you want to unsubscribe or not?" In Gmail, is that
Yeah.
I forgot they send an email back to whoever it is where you're getting it from, and you're
Yeah.
trying
You
to
have an open
unsubscribe,
XML
and you're just
emails. Yeah.
right. So you're just signaling, and I think that people need to take that off of automation and just note it, and just maybe even you may have to just put it in the spam folder and let it die, because going back to a link where it says to unsubscribe could be very well another trap, and it's not
and if you
just
Mhm.
Gmail that has that.
if you really want to keep people from knowing that your email is active, turn off auto download of images on
Yeah.
your email. I've
Yes,
said
that's
this
another
before
good.
a lot of, but you have the ability to put a hidden pixel or a hidden tiny image that you can't see. But if you haven't turned off auto download of images, the receiver will receive a notification if they have tracking software on. They'll receive a notification that you open their email. And then, depending on how your system is set up, they can find out where you opened
Mhm.
it, what device type you used to open it, if you forwarded it to somebody who else. Like, I've had to do that when I've had to serve people legal cases. I needed to see who are you sending this to, right? Because they didn't
Right,
have
right.
the taken, and I used a valid tool. So if you want to keep yourself from becoming somebody who gets tracked, turn off that auto download of images feature.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Which people, I mean, if you work for a .gov or edu, a lot of college students don't pay attention to those kind of details. So I know they're clicking on things that are hyperlinked to different places, as well as government employees. But I'm going to even call out older workers. If you're unemployed, you're trying to get employed. You're sending out
Mhm.
applications, a lot of them mass apply, you are going to be part of the devil's playground, so to speak, because you're not paying attention to who's actually sending you that piece of mail, especially when it seems random, if it seems that you need to act urgently. Notice all those signs as well. Military are also,
Another
I was
thing.
going to just
Oh,
say,
go ahead.
mention the military when they're transitioning out. And Russ, tell me if I'm wrong, but they're also pretty vulnerable as far as
They are.
what they pay attention to, because a lot of them, and it's not just the actual Army personnel, their spouses. Their spouses, since they've been to 5 different places in 5 years, they're also looking for the next opportunity wherever they're going to go. They are also vulnerable among those lines too.
Babes in the woods.
Absolutely, absolutely. So go ahead.
Oh, the other thing I'm going to add on that really quick. The other thing is the free giving of information, and so this is specific to, like, Meta or different platforms or different websites that have these little survey quizzes, like which celebrity are you, or which is your dream house, and
The
which
trap.
person do you most look like. But you have to ask
Yep.
yourself a question. It's like, where's your information going? What are their security protocols with your information? Because based on this personality quiz or whatever, it's giving you, who you look like, and you think it's fun and it's tongue in cheek. But meanwhile, they got your name, they know what you like to eat, they know your kind of music, they know what kind of movies you like to watch. And then what I call the scammer pipeline, because AI has made this even more streamlined and organized. It's like based upon your answers to these different questions, they know which filter to
Hmm.
target. As Ashley said before, like based on their setup, they can see where you are, so they know what type of ads are being run in that region. They know what type of phone you have. They know what type of vulnerabilities to exploit on that
Yep.
phone. All of this stuff is like, you have to actually stop being so trusting. Like you said,
Yep.
zero trust. Like, and I say stay vigilant, but it's the same sentiment. It's like you can't trust anything. You have to
Yep.
run it through every single level of verification before you even
Yep.
engage.
Zero trust. Exactly. Yeah, and funny you should mention that, Jay. If you guys get a chance to, and everybody in the chat, go check out the podcast Perfect Scam from AARP. It has something an episode recently very similar to something you mentioned about Facebook and Facebook ad. It's really fascinating to hear that and hear some of the same sentiment mentioned, Jay. But all of that, as far as older workers, check this out. The FTC a couple of years ago listed who are, there were two categories: those who spent the most money or was scammed out of the most money, and the ones who were most frequently scammed. I think we talked about it on the podcast here a couple of
Mhm.
times. Older workers are scammed for the most money
Yeah, because they
because
have the
they
most.
have the most. But by far, even I think LinkedIn survey and Norton's latest survey, you guys could check those out. That young people, even though they are starting to be more careful now, they look for what LinkedIn calls proof of life. They make sure that there's a real person that they can contact, find the job posting before they apply. But still, they're the ones who are most scammed the most frequently. Yeah,
Yeah, because they
yeah,
don't know, because this is their first time making their foray into this job
exactly.
market. the elderly, unfortunately, they tend to have dementia and
Right.
things like that, the later
Right.
stages
Well,
of their
that's when
life.
you take the phone
And
from them, you take the computer
yeah,
from them, and all that
yeah,
is they don't have anything that's ongoing. I'm not trying to be funny, but that's real. That that's real. Having
yeah,
had older people with communication that they're calling relatives, and they don't know who they're calling through their phone book, and they're calling scammers,
mhm,
and they're giving
yeah,
information out. So it ends up being catastrophe, not paying
yeah.
attention.
And for the youth, I mean, if they get
It
in,
also
I'm sorry,
goes
go
back.
ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
If they get into,
I was saying it also goes back. Look, real quick. It also goes back to the humane aspect because the elderly, they typically lose a spouse
Right.
and they're living alone, and so when they hear somebody talking to them, you know, and we do this with the being younger. There's ageism running rampant, and we think just because we have our lives that the elderly, our loved ones, they can just be okay going into the sunset. But what it does is it opens up and exploits the loneliness. They talk to people because nobody
Uh-huh.
really talks to them anymore. They think that all of their value has been extracted, and so that's it for them. But that's not the case. But this is what opens them up to being
Right.
deceived. So yeah, go ahead, Russell.
it's the phone thing. Like I said, for me, if somebody gets into my computer, it can cause an issue. My banking is in there, but with the youth, I mean, it might not be like I said the money thing because they might not have a lot in that bank. But what they're getting into, like I said, is the photos. I mean, I've worked with some of the people that have been trafficked before
Mm.
because that's what everybody, all the youth put everything in that phone. That phone is it, and it's so easy to give access. It's a whole
Yeah.
lot easier. It's a whole lot harder to get into my computer than it is for someone to get into your phone, especially someone that they've met online. Because my son, he has almost no friends except for online friends. That's where the majority of
Uh-huh.
his are now because he came up during the COVID situation. But so it's easy for someone to get into a phone, and then they've got pictures. They've got not only your pictures, you might have your girlfriend's picture, you might someone else, and they have so much other information. What sites you're going to, what your passwords are. So now they're cloning you on different things and getting things from
Yeah.
others, and they're not seeing that level. They're not understanding on how much they give on that. So that's why they get scammed a lot more, but they don't have as much money to get scammed out of. But the trouble is, then they're giving up more into doing things because now they're scared. We've got these pictures, we got this, we got that. We
Mhm.
found pictures of a young woman on your phone. It's a person's girlfriend, but she's 17. We're going to turn it over to the cops that you've got child porn. So you better do this for us now. I've
Yeah.
actually seen that scam work on teenagers because literally they do have child porn on their phone and they don't understand it.
But they didn't put it there, but it's still there
Exactly. So
nonetheless. Yeah.
that's
Right.
the scary stuff.
That is. Well, I'm going to have to conclude our show for today. Thank you.
That was
I
a quick
know,
hour.
right? We're going to have to plan maybe in the fall. We should plan like a maybe 90-minute show if that's possible. Combining all our schedules. We'll have to do one of
I
those
will
so we
spend time
can.
with you.
It's really this is always a great time with you guys. It's always the best. And I don't know if you know, but BeatSpot actually put us on one of their podcast lists as a top scam podcast or something like that. So I'll have to find it and send you guys
Cool,
the link.
cool.
Now,
Please.
yes, I will send you all the link. I think we might even be in two of their spots. Uh, One thing about being in those spots, having been part of the list before with my other podcasts and my blog, is that they often use it as a marketing tool for them. But the other part of it is it gets a ton of traffic over time. And
Mhm.
sometimes when they're checking up your podcast and they want to check to see where you are, when you get on one, you end up getting on two or three others because other people copy the list and put it on their site. So
Sure.
just I'll send that along to you guys, but to all of us, congratulations for being a great podcast. And also thank you guys, Jay, Russ, Ashley, for being the experts of you guys. And glad I chose you guys to be a part of this journey. And for the rest of you who joined us, thank you very much for joining us. And keep the watch out. I'm always doing episodes other week, I believe I'm at now. Probably the next couple of weeks, I'll be doing episode. But I don't stop. This is time when all of us could get together. And the secret is if you just release them into the podcast feed, like for a few minutes at a time, it can go for a few months. So, and we're so far ahead of the game as a podcast. All of us collectively with the information we have, we're always relevant. Even 5 months from now, we're still relevant because the rest of the world is kind of slow in catching up as far as job scams. But Jay, Russ, actually, thank you guys as always. And for the rest of you, I always say clarify, verify. Don't just apply. They scam free.
Yep.
Thank you. Bye bye.
All right. That should be the end.
You're still live.
See you guys later. I won't be in. I know.